Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form. It's by Noodlers. I honestly don't know how to pronounce this. I've just been calling it Squeteague. I have no idea if that's correct. If you know, leave a comment down below, because I'm kind of curious. Also, the vial was a little leaky. But anyways, it's an interesting blue with tiny hints of green. I remember a while back somebody saying that to them it perfectly matched blue jeans. I personally have blue jeans in many different shades of blue, but I suppose a couple of them do really look like this. This is one of my older samples, and I had actually used a little bit of it, so I did not have much left. In fact, right now if I lay it flat, only that little cone at the bottom is filled. And because of that, and because I thought I would really enjoy it, I only put it in one pen. And that is this pen. This is an AG Spalding Bros pen. It has a medium nib, but these pens are actually manufactured in Japan, so they're generally a bit more like a Western fine. However, this ink, spoiler alert, is kind of wet, which left this writing a bit closer to a Western medium. So, yeah. Okay, so I actually had several inks that kind of fell into a similar shade / category, and I made myself narrow it down because I think this one had like 8 comparables. So yeah, so here's Squeteague, here's Diatramentus Midnight Blue, which you can see probably has a little bit less green in it. Here's Roda und Klingner VittaR Green, which is really blue. And it's a bit darker, and yeah, it has a bit less green in it, but yeah. Here's Private Reserve Blue Suede, which is a blue with some green in it. It's a bit lighter, and if anything, I'd say it has a little more green. So, yep. And then lastly was Diamine's Eau de Nil, and I'm aware that I pronounced that much more like an English person than a French person, but I've only ever heard English people say it, so yeah. It's a bit lighter, but it's actually fairly similar. Like, I feel like if you were to water this down, you'd get something very close to this, so, yep. There you go, there are the comparisons. Now let's check out the chromatography. Now, this one is how you're supposed to do it. You can definitely see where that initial drop was put, but I hope the camera will show this. There's like a hint of pink to it. The camera doesn't want to show it, but it's mostly blue, but there's like a hint of pink in there. And then there's this light blue up, and then you get this dark, it's almost like a teal, or like a, I don't know, it's like a slate gray green, and then you get this bright blue up at the top. Now, the one that I let dry, which is not how you're supposed to do it, the dot is much clearer. I'd say the haze is a little lighter, and the green is much more towards the top, but the blue up the top is also, seems to be a broader band, so yeah. I wanted to see what this ink could stand up against. So here we go. Here's water. And as you can see, water breaks it up a bit, but not a ton. 1/3 bleach solution just turned it blue. It got rid of all the green and just turned it blue and didn't move it much. Ammonia pen flush, as you might be able to tell, really got the ink moving, but then because it's a chemical, when I was trying to stop it up, it sort of just seeped back into the page. Hydrogen peroxide had a significant impact. However, disclaimer, I do not in any way endorse anyone cleaning out their pens with hydrogen peroxide. Should you choose to, you chose to yourself. Yeah, and denatured alcohol did absolutely nothing, which is why I don't test it anymore. Alright, paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Yeah, so I sort of don't know what to say. It's a greenish blue, and because it's one of my older samples, I had some behavioral issues. So if you are a great fan of this ink, if you have a bottle of it, if you're familiar with it, please leave a comment down below, because I had some trouble. Now this is a very saturated ink, as you can tell from the smear. It took 16 seconds to dry on here. You do get some shading, but it's kind of like a soft shading. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's not like very clear, this is this, this is that in any part of this line, so I don't know. Yeah, I hope this will come up. Please focus, camera. See that? We get a little bit of feathering in a couple of places, and I can't really explain why, because this is actually the inside of the page, so that wasn't along an edge, but yeah, otherwise, I mean, there's no bleed, there's no spread. I don't think there's much echo, except in the water test, but we'll get to that. So, in that regard, it's rather nice, and I am enjoying the color. However, this water test is very bizarre. As you can see, there's still a lot there, but it kind of feathered and exploded. Most of the green washed away. We don't usually see that, so yeah. Next up is Fabriano. It's an 85 gram paper. It's not steamroller smooth like Clairefontaine. It's not ceramic coated the way that Rhodia is. But yeah, I quite like it. It tends to be able to handle inks that other papers can't. And here we see 18 seconds to dry, which is a bit longer dry time. And here, I really hope this comes up on camera. Oh, it doesn't want to. Why not? Well, anyways, there's a halo of red sheen all around here, and you see it a couple times in the words as well. But this is something that I wanted to talk about. This ink dried on the nib extremely quickly. And this time it wasn't even like I was switching between pens as I was writing. And when it does that, when you put it back down again, right as you put the pen down, you get sheen, but that sheen also really smears really easily. And so we've actually got a couple instances of me, like, as I'm trying to just scoot up the page, I'm like leaving marks from other bits that my finger picked up. So yeah, but anyways, besides that, we have this really lovely shading. I really enjoy the color, and this paper did handle it pretty well. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread. It's just yeah, and it would smear. The shiny bits would smear up to 2 minutes after it dried. Something to be aware of. I don't think there's much echo. I mean, maybe in the scrubby, but I consider myself very sensitive, and that wouldn't give me pause. Now, this water test is kind of interesting. You can see a little bit that's been left behind, but it didn't dye the page a ton, and the dots really remained. It was just kind of curious. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where again, it took 16 seconds to dry, and again, you get this really interesting shading. I really wish the camera would pick this up. You get a little bit of sheen right around here. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the color. I'm quite enjoying the shading. But it's still drying on the nib. This is a 6.5 out of 10 wetness, so it is definitely a wet flowing ink, and yet it dries on the nib very quickly. It's very saturated. I was having some weird issues with this. Now, this might be, as you can tell, this is the edge of the page, so I was getting some weird stuff along here, but I mean, again, that might be because of the age of the sample, but still. And again, we're getting this kind of weird water test. You might be able to tell it got kind of feathery and woolly in parts. Parts of it remained and other parts washed off, and I can't really tell why. The dots remained, but... Next up is Tomoe River paper, which is known for drawing out dry times and sheen and shading, and it definitely did. This had better. There we go. That's showing up. And even there, it's not nearly as much. Practically this whole bit right here is just red sheen. But yeah, for a Japanese medium, and it took 27 seconds to dry, and look, as I was doing this smear test, I smeared those dots, because the dots just take forever to dry. But yeah, anyways, the shading is really nice. It's sort of a soft shading. But since this ink tends to pool on this paper because it takes so long to dry, it can get very dark. It's very dark on there, and since this paper is so thin, we do have a bit of an echo problem. And this is fascinating. So I was laying it on really thick because I wanted to make sure I got some of that sheen on camera. But look what came through the other side. It's just green. It's like a soft emerald green, and I cannot explain that, but I thought I'd show you because it's interesting. Now, this paper loves to let ink slide away when you add more water, and that's kind of what happened here. You can see like a little bit of it, the dots stand out, but the lines are really, really mostly gone. Didn't dye the page much though. Now, next up is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper, where we definitely see some spread. Yeah, the line width definitely got broader. If this isn't a European medium, this definitely is. Maybe a Japanese broad. It's very woolly. We have no shading left. I kind of enjoyed the color though, so, you know, Took 2 seconds to dry, which on paper that is absorbent is kind of surprising, but again, it's a very saturated ink. We do get feathering. I hope you can see that. It's sort of like, it's a little bit of it, but everywhere. You know, it's not big spikes. It's not super distracting, but it is noticeable. And then we also have this. That's a lot. You see how dark that is in the spots, in many of the spots? That's just how close it came to bleeding through. And actually in a couple places it rendered onto the page below. Oddly in these dots and at the bottom of this T and this I, which was rather curious. But yeah, that's more bleed than you like to see in a Japanese medium. Granted, this is the world's worst 20-pound paper, so you probably have something at least a step up from that. Now, this water test, kind of not surprising once you're familiar with this paper. Absorbent paper tends to draw the ink in, make it harder to wash out, and that's kind of what happened here. I mean, there's a good bit remaining, but as you can tell, it kind of feathered, kind of exploded. It's kind of messy. It dyed the page. It would not be the easiest thing to recover. Now, next up is Mead Notebook Paper. It's very cheap. It's thinner than office paper. It's very common for American school children. As you might be able to tell, there isn't as much spread. There's a little. But for some reason, for the past month or so, this paper has started to feather like crazy. It usually is better about feathering, but I don't know, for some reason the last month it's just been acting weird. Now it took 2 seconds to dry. Once again, we don't really have any shading, but this was encouraging. So you may be able to see like a little bit here and there, but it is nowhere near this. So it definitely beat out the 20-pound on bleed. And yeah, I think, yeah, I scratched through the paper in that bit on that downstroke on the B, but yeah. See how it's very hazy, very light? It never once got onto the page below, so very well behaved in that regard. However, this paper does tend to freak out a little bit when you add water, and it definitely did here. But it's absorbent, so it wouldn't let all of it wash out, but as you can see, what remains kind of feathered and exploded all over again and turned a very different shade of blue. But I don't know, it depends on how determined you are to recover it. You might be able to. Now, lastly is Moleskine paper, which I hate because it seems to hate ink. And I am just so exasperated with this stuff. But, yeah, we get some spread. Not as little as the Mead, but not as much as the 20-pound. We get a really woolly texture. I hope this will come through. See that like weird, you can see the paper mulch in the paper, you know, it's, and it took 3.5 seconds to dry, which I can't explain. We have some very ugly feathering. We don't really have any shading, and those places where you could say it's almost shading, that's the parts where we have the exploding feathering. It's, yeah, it's not great, and look at that. That's even worse than the 20-pound paper. And actually this rendered onto the page below in so many little spots that I didn't know what to make of it. It was really just ridiculous. But, I mean, that's Moleskine for you. It's pretty bad. Now, this water test is kind of amazing. It feathered, it exploded, you can see a bit of color separation, it dyed the page, it actually made the texture of the paper completely change. That would be the complete opposite of fun to try and recover. If you're a fountain pen person, just don't use Moleskine. Just make your life more enjoyable and skip Moleskine. But yeah, there you go. There's Noodler's Squeteague. I may be totally mispronouncing that. It is kind of a blue jeans blue, in that it has some hints of green in it. However, yeah, my sample is kind of old, so I won't say that all your results will definitely be like this if you have a fresh bottle or even a fresh sample, but I don't know, maybe it'll be educational to know what happens if you leave it in a sample vial for a year. I don't know. But yeah, it can be problematic even on premium papers. Something, at least mine was, so something to be aware of. But when you do get sheen, it's a very beautiful contrast of like a bright, like almost like a Schaefer red with this blue, so I don't know. But anyways, there you go for your consideration from the Triple N Network. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.